Hello everyone. We're going to take a look at making static classes in this video, but before I do that I want to fix a bug from the last time after I finally figured it out. We would have eventually fixed it anyway by changing the way the game works, but for now the problem was in the game.as. Basically, if we killed the last ship in the array and still had extra bullets on screen, we'd get an error. See if I can quickly generate it. Problem is knowing which one's the last ship and being terrible at aiming and clicking off the game. That's always good. It's not going to happen, is it? There we go, we got the error. So I must have luckily killed the last ship in the array and still had some bullets left to process. So the problem was here, where we kill a ship. If we hit the last ship in the array, say our count is set to 10. If we delete that ship, sorry, postman. If we delete that ship and then come back through this for loop, if we still have bullets left, we'll come back up here. And then we'll be trying to access the ship that we've just deleted, so we were getting the error, and that's why. So just to quickly fix it, I'm going to cut this code out. And we're going to replace it by giving these ships some health, and we'll just reduce the health and remove them later on if they're dead. So if we just do ships count dot health minus minus, so I'll take one health point off. And outside of the for loop, so after the bullet for loop, we will add an if. We'll comment it as well. If the ship is dead, remove it. So we'll say if ships count dot health is less than or equal to 0, and then we'll just paste the code that we cut out. So for that to work, we're going to have to actually give our ships some health, which we were going to do eventually anyway, so why not? For now, we'll just make a public, not the best idea to make public variables, but never mind. Public variable called health, and it's going to be, for now it'll be an integer, might change that later. And in the ship constructor we just need to set it, so set the health. If we say 2 to begin with, health equals 2. So you've got to shoot them twice. Save that, make sure everything's saved, give it a go. Start shooting, or aimlessly spamming as I do. Notice how they don't die first hit. Got to shoot them twice to actually kill them. Pow pow. It also helps if you can actually hit them, which I suck at. Never mind. But that fixed the bug that we had. So let's crack on with making a static class. And the goal really is to take these functions that we had in the ship class that we made last time. We had these 3 functions. The one that I had an absolute howler with. But we're going to take these 3 out of the ship class, and we're going to put them into a static class. So I'm just going to cut them out. Cut those bottom 3 functions from the ship. Now that's effectively broken the game for now, but we'll come back to it later. And I'm going to make a new class. So file new, and I'll choose ActionScript3 class, and we'll call this one MyMaths. Okay. So we get a new ActionScript class that's half set up for us. I think I'll eventually stick a package into it, so we'll look at how they work. We're not going to extend anything, so we don't really need to import anything. And the rest of it is ready as a shell for us to code into. What I'm going to quickly do is paste the 3 functions I've copied. Now as it stands, they won't actually work. We'll come back to that in a bit, but we need to understand what a static class is. And we've got an example of that in the ship class. So up here where we've made a ship, we've got this little section of code here, this math.random, that we've used quite a few times, but we've never actually made an instance of math. Math is a class in Flash that you can use without ever needing to make an instance of. And that's a static class. Because here we've got the ship that we have to make before we can use. So that's not static. Then we've got the math class, which is a class in its own right that we can make use of without ever having to make an instance of. That's the difference between a static class and a standard class. Now the class itself, you don't come into the class and tell the class to be static. It's just a sort of way of designing a class. The class itself is not static, it's the functions and the properties inside it are static. And basically the keyword static just means belongs to the class. Instead of belonging to the instance, we have, for example, if I put the word static here, I'll go public static. That has now said this function is for everyone to use and it's static, it belongs to the class. So you don't need to make an instance of the class to use this function. You just type the class name, in this case mymaths, dot, and then the function name, which is distance between. It's kind of like, not exactly like, but you think of people, of humanity. We all have our individual names that belong to us, but we all share a planet which belongs to our class. So Earthlings all have a planet of Earth. Yet they all have their own names. It's a bit of a random example there, but hopefully you get the idea. As we get into it, you'll see how it works. So we're going to update all of these functions in the maths class, or the mymaths class, to be static. So we've got public static function, distance between. I did say in the last video that that was the best of the three, and that's because it already takes two separate objects. It doesn't assume any prior knowledge, it doesn't need to be inside an object to make use of it, whereas these two do. These two functions are assuming that they're still part of the ship class because they're using things like x or rotation, which no longer exist. So we're going to have to edit them a bit, but we'll start by making them both public and static. Stative. Public static, so we can use it without instantiating this class. Both public static, and we'll edit them a bit now. So this move forward has a number, so that's how far we want to move, but it doesn't know what to move, so we're going to have to pass an object in. So we'll pass, let's say 01 again, we'll keep it consistent, which is an object. So we've given it another argument, another parameter, another piece of information to use, and let's edit the function accordingly. So instead of x, it's going to be o1.x, o1.x. Any place we've got something that was referring to the ship, we now need to update to say o1 dot. Same here with o1 dot rotation, o1 dot rotation. And s is the speed that we're passing in, so that's okay. That function now should be okay. It's got no reference to the object it's inside of, because it's no longer inside a real object. So that one should be okay. Let's quickly do the last one, this face point. I'm actually going to rename because we're not using it to face a point anymore. We're figuring out the angle between two objects, so we'll call this angle between. So we've got the distance between up here, which should work, and we've got the angle between, so we'll update that one. Instead of sending two numbers, I'm just going to send two objects. So we'll have O1, which will be an object, and we'll have O2, which will be an object. And all we're going to do is return the angle between them. So we need to update this bit. We no longer have fx and fy. What we have are O1 and O2. So I'm going to use O2 as the first one because we want the distance. We're assuming the first object that gets passed in is the one we want to use as the pivot. So we need to know the distance between, the difference from 2 to 1. So we need to update both of these. I did say I'd explain all the maths that I'm using, which I promise I will do, but it is just GCSE stuff, so I know that doesn't mean you necessarily know it all off by heart, but it's not the most difficult maths in the world. The rest of that seems okay. It now no longer has any existing knowledge from the ship class, and we could use that anywhere. So what we will do, we'll go into the bullet class and use, like this one, we'll move the bullet forward using this static class. Anywhere we use distance between two objects, we might as well replace with this static function. Just neaten this up a bit. We don't actually need to calculate angle and then return it. We can just return that. Get rid of that. And just before I save the class, in fact, we'll save the class as we have been doing. Don't know what I'm doing here. Desktop, space gain. Save it in there as mymaths.as. Notice we don't have a constructor, by the way. We'll put a comment in here. This isn't necessary. Static methods don't need, in fact I'll just put static classes. Static classes don't need to be instantiated, so don't need constructors. Now what you might want to do is maybe tell whoever's using your class that they've done something wrong in here. You could maybe trace something like, you don't need an instance of this class, it's static. So if we tried to make an instance of mymaths, we'd get this error. Not error, we'd just get a trace warning. You could throw an error if you want to. I know I haven't covered that, but it's fairly easy to do if you Google error AS3. Enough waffle. I've saved the class. It's in the same place as all these other objects, so let's make use of it. I'm going to jump back to the ship class. First of all, I'm going to import it. So I'm going to import mymaths. Scroll to where I deleted the functions from, and now make use of them instead. So we no longer have these functions here, move forward, face point, and distance between. We need to use them in much the same way we use math, the math class here. So that's a static class, and ours is the same. So the rotation in this case is going to be mymaths dot, and you can see it's popped up some help for us. In this particular one, we want the angle. So face point is basically angle between. And we no longer want to pass the x and y of the target, we want to pass both objects. So it'll be this for the ship and target for the target, because we've got a point which tells us what we want the ship to target at, and this which actually refers to the ship itself. So hopefully that'll work there. Move forward no longer belongs to this class, that's a static method or static function from the mymaths class. So we do mymaths.moveForward, and in this case we need the object and the speed, so we'll have this and speed, because speed is a property of this ship class that we're in, so we're using this and this speed. And finally the hypotenuse, the distance between the ship and its target, we're going to use the static property that we've made. mymaths dot, and what is it? Distance between, it's already there. Target and this, and because we set that function up last time, this is fine, that should work straight off the bat. So fingers crossed if I save it and test it, you can see that the game works fine. The benefit is we have these static classes that we can now apply in other places, but just before we move on, if I quickly make an instance of the mymath class, you'll see the problem. So var mm equals new mymath. Save that, run it. You can see that we're getting problems. So I'm trying to make a new instance of mymaths every time, and it's tracing out that little warning just to remind me that I don't actually need to do it. If we replace that with math, so that's a class that belongs to Flash, this one actually throws an error because math works anyway. So you can see math is not a constructor. It was so unimportant when they wrote the math class that they didn't even bother with a constructor. So looking at ours, we don't actually need this. We could, I'm going to cut it out for now, I'll put it back later. Save that, run the game again. Oh, okay, it won't work. What am I doing? Oh, I didn't edit that out. Derp. Get rid of that. Save that, test it. You can see the game works fine without needing to have a constructor in our math class. That's because it's static, we never make it, so we don't need to construct it. going to paste it back in anyway, because it's good to have the comments. Let's see, what else can we use it for? In the bullet here, these bullets move forward. We can see there, move the direction they're facing. So instead of redoing these calculations again, let's reuse our code. If you're going to be an efficient programmer, you want to reuse stuff as much as possible. So I'm going to import the math class, import my maths, and then replace these two lines with my maths dot move forward this comma speed. So the bullet's going to move forward using its speed. Save that, test it, and you can see the bullets still fire. It's going to get annoying having to hit everything twice. But that's working. Let's see, what else are we doing? What does the turret do? I think the turret faces the mouse, so we could actually, let's see. Yeah, you can see that the turret is facing towards a point, so we could actually use the angle between. Problem is, sorry, joking. Problem is we need to pass a second object instead of just the position of the mouse. So we'd have to convert that to an object, which is easy enough. Let's say, replace all of this. In fact, we'll just import the class first up at the top. Let's import my maths. Come down here and we'll replace all of this. We'll just do rotation equals my maths dot angle between this, so the gun, and then we can make a new point here if we want, but faster just to make an object, which, if memory serves me, you can just do in curly braces, I'm hoping. So that could be mouse X and mouse Y. Let's try that. Might not work, it was just kind of done on a whim there. No, don't like that. Oh, needs a name on each of them, sorry. Just making an object with two properties, X and Y. And that seems to work. Or it did. No, that definitely doesn't work. Let's just get rid of that. Don't be too clever for my own good. Let's just make a new point. Unless, am I using the wrong version of mouse X? Ah, there, that's why. It was actually right. I just used the wrong version of mouse X and mouse Y. So, it's parent.mousex, parent.mousey. So what I've done there is the same as doing the following. I've basically said, I don't know, var o equals new object, and I've said o.x equals this. And the y equals that. This is a bit of an aside. I probably shouldn't have bothered, but you might learn something from it. Let's put these above that, and we could use them, can't we? So instead of doing this flowery bit, we could just put O. So we've made a variable called O, passed in an X and a Y property. Save it, test it. Works fine. So all I did was a shorthand way of making an object by putting it in curly brackets. Probably confusing you more than anything there. You can totally forget that. Ignore that I did that if you want to. We'll just use that. That could be a point. Which would mean we'd have to import point. But we've done that before. There we go. Save that, test that. It's a bit more viewer friendly. Anywhere else we can make use of our lovely static class? Possibly not. That's working. What other stuff have we got in the game? Bullet, the turret, the ship. We're a bit limited for now, aren't we? Done everything we can. Let's have another look at using static stuff. What we can do in our ship here, we can have a static property inside a ship, inside a class, that will affect all objects of that type. So we could have, let's say, private static var num ships. And we'll make that an integer and we'll set it to 0. So what we've said here is the ship class, I said I was going to do packages, didn't I? I'll do that in a sec. The ship class has now got a private static variable, so only the ship class can use it, but it belongs to the whole class, not the instance itself. And it's an integer. And I'm just going to use it to count how many ships we've ever spawned. So when we spawn a ship in the constructor, we'll do num ships ++ and then trace you have spawned space plus num ships plus quotes space total ships. Save it, test it. Oh, it works. And you can see the trace comments there. They will be updating, but it's not scrolling. So every time I kill a ship, we get a new one, and we should get the static num ships traced out. So notice it's 11 there. If this wasn't static, say I delete the word static, this variable now belongs to the instance of the ship, and see what happens, see the difference. We get 1 every time. That's because every ship is starting from 0, adding 1 to it and then tracing it out. We're not doing it based on every ship as it was with the static property. So the static word means it belongs to the class. Every instance of this class will use that exact same number. It won't make a version for itself. And it's the same with the functions. Save that. Let's wrap up by turning this into a proper package, which we haven't looked at before. So I'm going to put a package name in here. We'll call it generic code. Better than that. We'll use reusable code. So I've made a package called reusable code that I want my maths to belong in, which means I'm going to have to navigate myself to the place I've saved all these files, which in my case is on the desktop, my very messy desktop. And there we can see my maths. Now if I save the class now, it's going to break because it's saying it belongs to a package. So it's saying it belongs to a package, but it doesn't reflect the location of the file. So I'm going to close the file, go to where the file is, and put it into a folder with the package name, which was reusable code, wasn't it? Drag my maths into it. Go back, we'll still get problems now, but let's try. You can see that my maths no longer exists, it can't be found, and that's because we've moved it. So up here where we're importing it, we now need to include the package name, much like we do here. So flash.display is a package, or rather, flash is a package, display is a package within the flash package, and so on. So we can have reusable code dot mymaths, and you can see it pops up. So it's searching through your folders for you. I'm just going to copy that, replace where I've used it in the other files. Better save that. Do we use it in the turret? Yeah, let's replace that, save it, use it in the game possibly. No, we don't. Probably can do somewhere. We do in the ship, so let's replace that, save it, test it. You can see now that it works. So we've made our first package there, which is a step towards organising your code in a bit more of a useful way. Every one of these classes would belong in a package really, if we have time towards the end, because I'm rapidly reaching my deadline for these videos. If we have time at the end, we'll stick them all in a package. We'll maybe make a package called Space Game or something, and these can all be classes within that. But I think that's enough to be going on with. I note, again, the game didn't really change, but I think I've got a bit of time now, so I might even do the next video and upload that. I'll see you shortly.